not appear to be informed by today's realities. There are things younger people can even do better. Again, in all of this, there is one thing we should emphasize: the competence of the person.
Who is a civil servant? You can stay more than 60 years. Yes.
This provision presupposes that you were appointed before you got to 60 years. But when you get to 60 years, there cannot be a further appointment.
Mr. Chairman, I think who is a civil servant? You can stay more than 60 years. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the secretary must be a civil servant. Can't we take someone from the World Bank, from IMF, from anywhere, who's an expert, who has done very well somewhere? Can't you bring him on board to be the secretary? And why should that age maybe attribute to such person? I don't, because you call it appointment. I don't know. Because you want the best brain.
I do not think we should limit the criteria for appointment to someone being in the civil service. I feel consistent with other rules we have made. The emphasis should be on the competence. And you do not want to run everything. We must create a society where people can migrate from the private sector to the public sector, and vice versa. What is important is not even whether you work for IMF or World Bank. There are no special qualifications required. Is the person competent? What qualifications are we looking for? If those are stated in the law, the appointing authority can decide whether to find the person from the civil service or to find the person from the private sector. Your Excellency, when I was governor, I found that sometimes there are jobs that are better done by people who have spent all their lives in the private sector. If I find them to be of value, I had the pleasure of appointing them. But if I am limited to civil service or civil servants, that is creating yet another dichotomy. After balancing federal character, then you balance private public sector character. Lastly, Mr. President, in all the laws that we make most of the time, ministries are represented at various levels in various boards. Invariably, the minister will nominate someone who must be in the civil service in his ministry. So already you will have civil servant content. I do not think that we should use the sector as a criteria for appointment of a secretary. Mr. President, thank you very much. Sir, with all due respect to my colleagues, in the world we live in now, that is knowledge-driven, a digital world, to talk about age as a factor, I think it will be completely unrealistic. I do not appear to be informed by today's realities. There are things younger people can even do better. Again, in all of this, there is one thing we should emphasize: the competence of the person. And competence is not informed by age. Sometimes the borderline between age and senility is in the details. So I think to allow the appointing authority the free hand for who we think is a fit and proper person to occupy a position. Too much restriction is unhelpful in terms of giving the executive power to do what needs to be done. Thank you, sir.
An overall chief executive and accounting officer, who is called the executive secretary of the board itself. Now, what we are talking here, under section page 19 and 20, we are talking about the staff of the tribunals. The tribunals are established for zones and also of the main tribunal itself. Therefore, they are normally drawn from the staff of the board itself. Exactly. So that they are civil servants who are now mandated to work on as coordinating secretaries of the tribunal that are established to take care of each of the zones. Therefore, there are civil servants who are already on desk. Now, if they appointed the secretaries of zones, when they reach the age of 60, a civil servant will have to retire. That is what this issue is talking about. The tribunal, these are not independent entities. They are entities that are established from within the larger system, which are covered under the staff of the board of the institutions itself. Therefore, they are already there. They are posted, more or less, to serve as secretaries of the coordinating secretaries and secretaries of the tribunals. They are not supposed to be, and tribunals are not supposed to be independent institutions like that. They operate as adjuncts, to the main board itself.
Mr. Chairman, as an example, Mr. Chairman, with the assembly, and we have clerks of committees. The assumption that is being made by my dear Oshiomhole is that no, because there is a competent person outside the National Assembly, he can now be a clerk of the appropriation committee. The issue is, the secretary is not a secretary of the Joint Tax Board. The secretary is a secretary of a tribunal that operates within the civil service structure, like registrars of court. And therefore, once you say this is open for everybody, what are you saying? What are you suggesting? You are demoralizing everybody, and these are people that are there, competent, and they are doing the job, and know the job. And lastly, sir, Senator Adams, also a member of this committee, he has canvassed that argument, and he was thoroughly. So this secretary is a civil servant. You can now qualify him must be a civil servant. He's a secretary of Tribunal.
Concur with Senator Yahya Abdullahi that where the omission here is that if you are a civil servant and you are secretary of the tribunal, you have option of serving for a 4-year of 2 terms. If as at that time you still have opportunity to continue in service, you will go back to the service where another person will be appointed. So that is what this particular section of the law is trying to say. But they must be appointed within the civil service. Within the civil service. And you are entitled to spend 2 terms of 4 years each. And after your expiration of your term, you go back to the service if you have the opportunity of continuing. But if, while serving as secretary of the board, your time as a civil servant now expired, then you retire, then you go. Another person will be appointed from the service for that particular position. Thank you.
Administrative staff. And I'll give a simple example. When you have election tribunals, you appoint judges. However, the people that sit at the desk are actually judicial officers who are civil servants. They come and go. It is the same thing here. What you have here is a secretary, an administrative staff of the tribunal who is a civil servant. And if you don't legislate in such a way that he is also called by civil service rules, then you'll be offending another provision. And like I said at the hearing, we as senators cannot make laws to circumvent another law. The law says, for example, civil service says 35 years or 60. And that is why if you look at this, it says whichever is earlier. It qualifies it. Whichever is earlier. So what we are discussing here are actually administrative staff simpliciter. And in order to fall within civil service rules is why that provision has been there. And I think it's absolutely correct. Thank you.
Well, in view of the void ambiguity,